So I'm in the national park. I'm just showing you how only a couple of months after the rains, look at the soil. Look how hard it is. I can't even break it with a rock. Ouch. So the desert already. Only 2 months after our rains, this should be, you can barely tell the difference between the roads. Here's a road, you can barely see it. So this should be huge, lush grass everywhere. Loads of different species of grasses, etc. And you can see it's a desert. Park. It's June, at the beginning of June 2021, a couple of months after our rainy season, and we had a good rainy season. And as you can see, it's already a desert with rock hard ground that you can't even break the soil surface. Bare ground, nothing for the animals to eat. Now, I want to talk a little bit about elephants because the Zimbabwe government is about to cull elephants because our environmentalists and conservationists say that this land cannot sustain the number of elephants that are on it, and that's what's causing this bare ground. But that's absolute rubbish. That it's not the elephant's fault, it's our management. And if we cull elephants, it's going to be absolutely disastrous because we're treating a symptom of our reductionist management and we're not treating the cause of why the ground is bare in the first place. And what happened was, when we first set aside areas for national parks in the 1950s, which my father was a part of, they protected the areas by taking out the native villages that lived in those areas. And what that had inadvertently done is set off a massive chain reaction across that whole ecosystem, because even though they'd met their short-term objective of taking the people out, what had happened is they had unwittingly taken the apex predator out of an ecosystem. And human beings are an adult elephant's only predator. So as soon as they removed the people from those national parks, or the apex predator, like the wolves in Yellowstone, they took this apex predator out, and suddenly you had thousands and thousands of elephants going, oh, we don't have to stay bunched together for protection, we don't have to keep on the move, away from people and being hunted, etc. So they just started behaving unnaturally. They would stay much longer in areas, they would overgraze the grass, and that started to lead to more and more bare ground. Overgrazing obviously causes bare ground. So we didn't have too many elephants. We had too many elephants behaving unnaturally. And then what the government did, which they're planning again now, is they came along and they proved that there were too many elephants, and that was what was destroying the land. And they culled 40,000 elephants over the next few years. And the result of that was that the desertification got worse, not better, because the land has to have that number of animals, but it has to have those animals behaving naturally. And the thing that creates natural movement of wildlife is predators. So there's a symbiotic relationship between grasslands, healthy grasslands, and healthy ecosystems in arid areas, and herding animals and pack hunting predators. So what we've done is completely messed up the balance of the ecosystem and set off these chain reactions, and then we make another reductionist decision towards the problem. Meanwhile, it's our management that's causing the problem. So these areas are being overgrazed, so we have incorrect timing of animals. But if we also rested these areas and took all the animals out, like we did by culling elephants, we greatly reduced the animal numbers, we would still see these areas dying, because there's a symbiotic relationship between grass, plants, and the impact of animals in arid areas in the world. So they're designed to have huge herds churning up and aerating the soil with their hooves, flattening the long grass after the rains, and dunging and urinating on the thing, so they're fertilizing it, and they form this beautiful protective mulch that protects the soil. And when it rains, its effective rainfall. It sinks in through that mulch and goes into the ground. And if you think of all the different shapes and sizes of hooves designed to impact the soil differently, and then you think of all the different shapes and textures and sizes of dung, which is obviously designed to filter through that mulch at different layers so that you've got that perfect fertilization all the way through. And you think of the hooves like the tiny impala breaking up the soil surface, their little hooves splaying out, all the way to an elephant's great big foot flattening the coarser grass stems to where it all is this beautiful symbiotic relationship to create this mulch. And this afternoon I'm going to add on a clip where we've been holistically managing with the correct impact of, we use livestock as a biological tool to help because we don't have the correct numbers and balance of wildlife, but the wildlife are also doing it. We have thousands of elephants there, but it's all the correct timing and impact of animals, which I'll show you later. So this is a non-functioning, highly advanced desertification, dead ecosystem that we're blaming on elephants. But I'm going to show you later how it's our management, not the elephants, that are causing the problem. So we need to stop blaming elephants. We need to stop making stupid decisions like culling. We discovered 60 years ago that culling doesn't work, but because of professional egos, they still cull to this day. And ecological illiteracy, they don't understand the ecosystem function. So, thank you. So I'm not Africa Center for Holistic Management on the same day, a couple of hours later, and it's less than 30 k's away from Zambezi National Park. Same soils, same rainfall, and we've come here. We now can't go any further because we can't find the road and it's still quite wet. And we, even last year when we only had 280 mils of rain for the whole season, we had water all year round in the river here. As you can see, we have we have lots of elephants. There's elephant dung and lots of insects and stuff in there. So what we do now is the wildlife and the management herd, the tool of livestock, the management herd, before the next rainy season, what they will do is they will trample down all the grass on this whole area, this whole property, and fertilize and mulch it. So you see how thick it is. I mean, this is just on the road being done by the cars, but the wildlife and livestock will be doing this job over the next few months of dry season, and they will get all that grass down so that the sunlight can reach the roots and trigger new growth. It's mulched, it's fertilized, and it's ready to catch rain that will sink through the grass and down into the roots. And we have so much wildlife on this place because it's attracted by the abundant grasses, and you can see that we don't have the same pressure put on the trees by elephants because they have a lot more food in here. And elephants are predominantly grazers, so the reason when there's no grazing, they hammer trees, is when there's no grass for them, they have to get enough protein, so they hammer the protein dense trees. But the other thing that happens is, as biodiversity loss happens and more desertification, and because we've been burning as a tool for so long to manage these grasslands, is we have more and more fire-dependent grasses, and they have far fewer proteins and nutrients for the animals. So they would have to eat a whole lot more to get the nutrients that they need. And what we're doing on this land now is we'd never burn, and we use the animals to flatten this grass and sort of clear it after the rains. And so once that mulch is formed, and every year that we're doing that and increasing biodiversity, and it's healthier and healthier, is the animal dependent grasses start coming back, and those are far more protein dense than the fire dependent grasses, obviously because their whole relationship is with animals and not with fire. So yeah, big difference. Same day, 30 kilometers away, and the only difference is management. That is traditional, outdated reductionist management, and here it is holistic management, where we manage the complexity of people, ecology, people, environment, and financial, the complexity of that, and we balance that all the time. So there's nothing. So what holistic management is it flows with the unpredictable complexity of what's going on, and between wildlife, between people, and everything, and there's nothing is systematic in nature. So that's what holistic management is it's flowing with the unpredictable complexity of these things, rather than when people have grazing systems or management systems where they only look at one aspect. We balance those three things all the time, and when we plan the grazing of the management herd of livestock, all the wildlife movements are taken into consideration when we use the planning process initially, and we even take into account guinea fowl breeding periods, etc. And then we have this planning process which we are able to adapt and change at any point. Say we have a fire, say we have buffalo coming through and doing the job in an area, etc., etc. So we're just always flowing with the complexity of what's going on this land. And there's zero conflict with wildlife, because of course biodiversity and wildlife are a priority, and we don't lose any livestock to wildlife, because they're kept overnight in a boma, so they're protected all day by the herders, and then at night they're in their bomas. So I'll put a little clip of that on at the end of them coming into their boma in the evening, and we know where they are at every point of every day on this land, doing an incredible job of helping restore biodiversity and bring back our grasses, trees, birds, insects, wildlife, because that's what it's all about, and abundant water. So that's the last of the cattle coming into the kraal, and look how patiently the sheep and goats, so they don't go in because they know they haven't been counted yet. How clever is that? It's so cute. All the kids down there. And this is how peaceful these guys are. Look, I'm closing up the kraal for the night. Done. Still a tender riverbanks,
Skinny water.
really skinny water. I'm showing how clear the river is. It's a meter or so deep over there, and you can still see the bottom all the way. And here, it's so clear.